And for more now on the trials and tribulations of the trade battle, we are joined by Spencer Critchley, a Democratic strategist and a managing partner at Boots Road Group, and Joseph Pinion, a Republican strategist. We thank you both so much for being here and coming on the show once again. It's good to see you. Let's start very quickly, Joseph. Huawei's founder said that the grace period here really doesn't mean much. How should this be interpreted by China's President Xi? Is this truly an olive branch, or is this just a way of reinforcing what's down the road?
Well, look, I think that realistically, the administration is trying to do what they can to mitigate whatever impact it's going to have on American businesses. I mean, I think if you look at what's happening with American farmers, the administration gearing up for possibly another $15 billion round of aid there to those American farmers. I think that what they're trying to do is send a strong message saying that, yes, we're serious about these trade tariffs, but at the same time, not making sure they're going to cripple American business in the process and, by extension, the American people who depend on them.
Spencer, how much will China be hurt if U.S. companies can't use Huawei tech?
I don't know if I'm the best judge of the internal economy in China, but I think that both countries are going to suffer and are already suffering. And, surely the case was closed on this back in the late 20s, early 30s, when the Smoot-Hawley Tariffs Act was passed in 1930 and then repealed in 1932 after it did terrible damage and made the Depression much worse than it needed to be. So, this 90-day reprieve on Huawei is something. I think, by the way, the suspicions about Huawei's technology need to remain. But this overall climate of starting a trade war, which requires $15 billion and more of bailouts of farmers, who I'm sure would much rather be just producing their crops and selling them the way they were, is just bad for everybody.
And of course, this doesn't just impact farmers. We've been hearing every passing day, we're hearing from more and more companies and industries, businesses, warning of how this trade war will affect them. Kohl's, JCPenney, and Home Depot sending out warning signals today. Walmart and Macy's have both warned about higher prices for customers as a result also. And you have Nike and Adidas among 170 footwear retailers saying that further tariffs could have a catastrophic effect, forcing consumers to foot the bill. Are these warnings having any influence whatsoever on the White House? What do you think?
Look, I think that the president is what I would call on the 35-year crusade. You have to remember that it was Japanese currency manipulation that private citizen President Trump was talking about before it became President Trump, talking about Chinese currency manipulations and trade imbalances. I think that when you talk about politically, I think it would behoove the administration to recognize the fact that it's very difficult to run on the trade tax or run on an income tax that's putting more money in the pockets of parents, when at the same time the parents are forced to spend that money clothing their children on their way to school. So I think all around there are going to be some ways in which this administration needs to be conscious of the fact that, yes, you want to make sure that China plays by the rules, but doing so in a political environment that we have right now makes it very dangerous when it comes to getting reelected and also having a positive impact.
Further complicating the whole political climate and the ramifications of everything that we're seeing right now, the president, of course, has downplayed the economic impact from this trade war. He's saying that China has far more to lose here. But the Boston Fed president says that the ongoing trade war, he just said this today, between the world's two biggest economies is a prominent downside risk. When you start talking about the larger economy and the risk of the expansion, how much pressure does that put on Washington, Spencer?
It's hard to say. I mean, President Trump seems to believe what he's saying about this stuff, and it's almost as if he's trying to chant what he wants to be true, and he thinks he can somehow magically evoke that truth by simply repeating the words. Either that, or he actually does not understand what a tariff is and does not understand what a trade deficit is. And that's the other equally scary possibility here, I think. He at least gives the convincing performance of believing that China would actually pay these tariffs when, in fact, of course, they're a tax on American manufacturers and consumers. And he seems to think a trade deficit is money that we actually owe to China, whereas in the context of global trade, a trade deficit with a low-cost country like China could actually be a very good thing.
All right, Spencer Critchley and Joseph Pinion, thank you so much for your time. We have to leave it there. It's good to see you both.